Hello everyone. So let us in this video discuss the first type of ionic polymerization, and that is nothing but your cationic polymerization. Now as the name suggests, the propagating chain here would be comprising of a carbocation. Okay. Now like we did in the case of the free radical polymerization, we will be talking about the various cationic initiators, and then we will be talking about the mechanism. Now, in the process, where then when we discussed about the free radical polymerization, we talked about steps like initiation. Okay, there was step like initiation there. Okay, and then we had something called propagation step. Okay, and the third we have something called the termination step. Okay, so we had the initiation, we had the propagation, we have the termination steps here when we discussed about free radical polymerization. Now, in this case also, we will have all these steps, that is initiation, propagation, and termination steps. Now, we will be concentrating only, we will be taking up only the vinylic polymerization and try to understand the cationic polymerization. So vinyl polymerization is what we are going to take as our kind of base and try to discuss this particular polymerization. We are not going to venture into other type of polymeristic mechanism for such as polyethers or polyesters. All those things in detail, we are not going into the mechanistic and the how it happens. We will be basing to understand this ionic polymerization on the basis of vinylic polymerization. So that you have to keep in mind. Some of the polyesters and polyethers you might be studying in your last module that you are dealing with. Okay, so right now we will be understanding this ionic polymerization only on the basis of vinyl polymerization. So like in the case of free radical polymerization, in the mechanism, we will be having a initiation step, we'll have a propagation step, and we will also have a termination step. So let us today in this video, let us talk about the various cationic initiators. Now, if you look in this particular exam slide, you find that as I told you, when we talk about the cationic polymerization, the propagating species is basically a carbocation. Now, an initiation step you can think of like this. A cationic initiator will activate this particular vinyl monomer and form the corresponding initiator monomer complex. Okay, so this is the basic thing that happens when you have a cation based initiator. So if you have a cationic initiator, it activates the monomer by reacting with it and in turn generate a carbocation. And this initial species, like in the case of free radical, we will call this as initiator monomer cation. Okay, or initiator monomer cation complex or cation initiator. Okay, something like that you can call it. And another important thing that you have to remember here is when you have the reaction happening with the monomer to generate this initiator monomer complex, the it is a positively charged species. So obviously you have a counterion associated with it. Now, what is the type of counterion that is associated with this example will depend upon which is the initiator that you are using for the cationic polymerization. So let us look into what are all the different types of initiators that are possible in the case of cationic polymerization. So most common initiator that we use for cationic polymerization is the mineral acid. And in mineral acid, the most common ones are the sulfuric acid and the phosphoric acid. So you can now understand if suppose you use H2SO4 as a uh, initiator here, what happens? You have H plus adding on here to generate a carbocation, and in the process, the counterion would be HSO4 minus. Okay. Similarly, here when H plus is acting as a while activating the monomer, the counterion would be H2PO4 minus. Okay. So depending upon what is the initiator that you are using, counterions are so generated. Now, here I forgot to mention one thing, that when this activation happens, see, this substituents, that is R, plays a very important role. If these substituents are not sufficiently stabilizing these ions that are generated here, then definitely this reaction would be a failure. That means it won't be activated enough to undergo such type of ionic polymerization. So this R group, which kind of stabilize the corresponding ions, be it a cation in this case or an anion in the anionic polymerization, if these are not stabilizing, then that reaction won't proceed with the ionic polymerization. So this particular substituent play a very important role, and that is why we have very limited number of vinyl monomers which we can use for carrying out ionic polymerization. So apart from mineral acids, we can have Lewis acids also acting as a initiator. But often when we use Lewis acids, they cannot be used directly in order to activate a monomer, but it requires certain proton source or a cation source for acting truly as a initiator. So basically, these Lewis acids can be considered to be a kind of co-catalyst or co-initiators along with the proton source or a cation source, which actually are the initiators. So often when we use Lewis acid, we use a combination of a proton source and the Lewis acid. So that combination is called the initiating system. So for example, here BF3, when it is used as an initiator, we usually have a proton source like water. Okay, so when we use water here, they react to form this type of intermediate, because you have an H and OH minus generated in the process, and this OH minus would be accepted here to form OH BF3 minus, and H plus is generated in the process. Now, H plus is the one that is activating here, and the counter ion would be OH BF4 BF3 minus. Similarly, here when it is a cation source, like we use certain kind of alkyl halide as a cation source, and we use AlCl3. What happens? This AlCl3 will accept a chloride ion from this alkyl halide to form AlCl4 minus, and in the process R plus is generated. Please correct this. This is not R minus, but rather it is R positive. Okay, so that is how we are able to use Lewis acids also as initiator. So basically together we use it with a proton source or with a cation source, and thereby this binary system of Lewis acid with the other proton source or a cation source is termed as the initiating system. Okay, so this is another type of initiator that we use uh, in the cationic polymerization. Let us look into more examples of initiators. So here there is another different type of Lewis acids like ELBR3. ELBR3 has a tendency to auto-ionize. That means it reacts with another molecule of ELBR3 and thereby accept a Br minus from the other AlBr3, and therefore convert it into AlBr4 minus, and in the process we generate AlBr2 positive. So these cationic species and anionic species are generated as a result of auto ionization. So this is another initiator which can be used for cationic base polymerization. Now, other type of initiator involves here, as you can see, we have these triphenyl methane chloride. Okay, triphenyl methane chloride. These auto ionize Okay, because this cation is highly stable, we know, because it is surrounded by three phenyl groups which are kind of able to resonance stabilize these carbocation very well. So when you have this chloride, it will it auto-ionize to generate these triphenyl carbocation, which can act as an initiator. In the same way, we have tropyl chloride, which can form tropylium ion, okay, which we know is a 4n+2 system. So it's highly possible to form such type of species, and in the process Cl minus is generated and they can act as a initiator in the process. Another process is use of iodine. Okay, so when your iodine is used along with the monomer, what happens is that it will undergo the halide addition first. First, you have the halides being added on both end. So that is what you can see, ICH2 and CiR2. So basically, it's just the addition of the iodine molecule. And thereafter, what happens is that you have an HI removed in the process, and H from here, and I is removed from here to generate a double bond back here, and HI is generated over the process. Another way that can happen, which actually is the cause of cationic polymerization, is that we can have this I like getting dissociated, getting heterolytically dissociated to form I minus, and in the process form a positive charge. Now, this possible heterolytic cleavage will happen only if this carbocation is sufficiently stable. Okay, so this alternate iodine also can be used as initiator. So there can be two pathways that happens, either forming a HI, and this then HI will act as a initiator by adding on to proton and thereby generating a carbocation, or this carbocation would be formed which further can react with the vinyl monomer and thereby continue the propagation step. So that's why I2 can be also used as initiator for cationic polymerization. Now, another initiator possible is by electron transfer process. Okay, so here what happens is a monomer is able to transfer one of the electron, okay, and to the acceptor, and in the so radical cation is formed via electron transfer in which monomer is the electron donor and may also initiate the cationic polymerization. So we require an acceptor, and monomer initiate the cationic polymerization by acting as a electron transfer. So it transfers the electron onto the acceptor, and in the process getting converted to a monomer radical cation. Okay, and this then further participate in the cationic polymerization. So this is one example here. So here we have a monomer, a type of monomer. So basically what happens is you have a heterolytic cleavage happening here, and you have radicals formed here, and this radical can combine with one of the electrons on the lone pair of nitrogen to form a double bond here, and thereby you have a single electron species generated here, and the radical electron on this particular carbon will be lost to the this particular nitro compound, okay, and thereby generating a radical carbocation. And now this can further react with the monomer, okay, and add on to this monomer and thereby generating a carbocation here, and then they can participate in the propagating step. So this is a way of generating radical carbocation, and thereby they can participate in cationic polymerization. So this is via electron transfer, in which monomer is the electron donor, and they itself act as a act to initiate the cationic polymerization. So this is another type of initiator that we can use in cationic polymerization. Now, before I close this video, let us look into the carbocation initiation process. Okay, so as I told you, we can use mineral acid as the mineral acid as the initiator. So in this case, they have used HCl. So when HCl is added on, okay, you have a carbocation generated. Now the addition of H plus, okay, it follows exactly the Markovnikov's rule that you are pretty aware of. Okay, so the carbocation in this case would be a Cl minus. That means the counter ion would be Cl minus. So if you compare these three different types of vinyl monomer, okay, it's pretty easy to understand that this the carbocation that is generated here would be the most stable because it is stabilized by hyperconjugation via six sigma bonds, sigma CH bonds. However, in this case only three, and here we have no such stabilization. And now here I have written a statement that says that of these three monomers, only isobutylene provides the requisite carbocation stability for the cationic polymerization. So that means only this particular monomer is sufficiently stable to participate in cationic polymerization. And these propylene and these ethene doesn't usually undergo cationic polymerization because they are not sufficiently able to stabilize the generated carbocation. So only isobutylene is sufficiently stable enough to really undergo the propagation steps in a cationic polymerization. If we go further into another type of more vinyl polymer, so it is a kind of styrene. Now, styrene is supposed substituted at the para position with certain substituents. So we can have different types of substituent here. We can have OCH3, we can have CH3, H, and Cl. So um, when the cationic polymerization happens, suppose we treat this vinyl monomer with HCl, that is a mineral acid, okay, and in the process it will form what the CH3, and then you have the CH2 positive, and you have the phenyl system here with the substituent here. Okay, now anything that will stabilize this carbocation, that would be feasible. So if you have electron donating substituent here, the resonance stabilization of this carbocation would be really favorable. So in that sense, this anisole, that is this particular group with the lone pair, can participate in resonance stabilization and thereby stabilize this carbocation quite effectively in comparison to the CS3 or H or Cl being electron withdrawing, they don't much stabilize the carbocation. So here you can see how electron donating substituent kind of enhance the cationic polymerization. And if we have substituent present at the ortho position instead of the para position, if you have substituent present at the ortho position, it will retard the addition regardless of whether they are activating or deactivating. So even if you have activating group present at the ortho position, the rate is considerably reduced. That is because of the steric hindrance that is caused by the ortho substituent. So para substituents can effectively increase the rate of the cationic polymerization um, by electron donation. But if you have the ortho substituent, you do not have much of a cationic polymerization happening because of the steric reasons or the steric hindrance provided by the ortho substituent. Now, this is another monomer. This is a vinyl ether. Okay, so if it undergoes reaction with a carbocation here, okay, and in the process it will generate a. So if it reacts with a carbocation, so you have the pi electron reacting here, and in the process it is forming R dash CH2, and when the electron it forms bond here, obviously you have the carbocation generated here, so we have H plus forming here, and these can be we can draw another resonance structure like this, where it is kind of stabilized by this carbocation is kind of stabilized by resonance. And because of this resonance stabilization, this particular vinyl ether also can undergo, are very reactive towards cationic initiators, because they are kind of stabilized by resonance, and therefore can wonderfully participate in the cationic polymerization. So in this video, we looked into the various cationic initiators, and we looked into how the stabilization of the carbocation generated on the initiator monomer complex can greatly affect the reaction rate. And we looked into various substituent effect, how the substituents can affect the cationic polymerization. So I hope in this video you have pretty much understood how uh, complex this cationic polymerization is. That means we have to look into various factors in order to understand clearly the rate and the ways in which the cationic polymerization happen. It's not as simple as we saw in the case of free radical reaction. Now, we are going to look in the next video on the propagating step. So I hope you just go through this video again, make your notes and try to understand it. If you have any clarification about the mechanism, please do ask me questions regarding that. Okay, so in the next video, we will be looking into the propagating steps. So have a nice day. Thank you.